Look, and the apartheid word specifically is both used by people who were crucial in ending apartheid in South Africa, like Desmond Tutu or Ronnie Kasrils, who served as intelligence minister under Mbeki, who I've interviewed. And the other main people who use the apartheid word are Ehud Olmert and Ehud Barak. So it is what it is. And I don't support second-class citizenship and occupation and sieges for anybody, no matter who they are.
Are you not concerned about the binary between either condemning Israel entirely, being like also a stance that a lot of like very strong and notorious anti-Semitic people agree with, versus like, you know, seeing this as more of a complex issue where it is wrong what's going on, and that there's also a way to do this that Israel still exists and is supported?
So it's not a complex issue. That's the big thing. It's super simple. There's one group that has enormous power. It's the most powerful country in the Middle East. It's backed by the United States. It acts on another population of people with total impunity and is never held accountable for anything. So there's no symmetry in the relationship, period. And just as like a thought experiment, IDW people, if we know that if somehow a population of Jewish refugees ended up in West Bank and Gaza, and an Arabic government in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv had an open-air prison in Jewish Gaza, which they bombed with white phosphorus. They killed civilians indiscriminately, and they had no provisions for medicine. They had an embargo that blocked food, that electricity wasn't running, that there was an over 48% unemployment rate. Life expectancy and malnutrition statistics were horrifying. One of the major policymakers in this hypothetical Arabic Palestinian state said, we need to put those Jews on a diet. In the West Bank, there was another Jewish area where there was a little bit more autonomy, but there was regular Arabic settlements where they pulled up the Jewish farmers' foods. They terrorized them with rocks. The security forces broke children's bones, and they couldn't drive on their own roads. We'd all have no problem understanding what that was. So there's nothing complex about it. The second part of your question, it's a pure asymmetry relationship. And the question is rights or not. So that's it. It's not complicated.
We have to start with the big news of these past couple of weeks. A continuation, an acceleration of the apartheid system in Israel, a continuation of ethnic cleansing against the Palestinian people. This is something that we just can't equivocate on anymore, and we can't accept equivocation. It's something that truly exposes to people that this line that folks try to make between domestic and foreign policy is not a hard one at all. These questions affect you, they affect human beings, and this is not something that is just of academic interest to a few people. This is something that affects lives today, and we need to treat it as such. Everybody listening to this, I'm sure, understands generally what's been going on. Continuation of the forced evictions of Palestinians from their homes by far-right Israeli settlers with the full support of the legal system and the state of Israel. During Ramadan, nonetheless, police raiding raiding a mosque while people were still inside worshiping. The burning of the grounds around one of the most holy sites in Islam. And as we are broadcasting right now, a horrific escalation of violence in Gaza, where the IDF, who have already been pounding the Palestinian people who are living in what can only be described as an open-air prison from the air with their warplanes. Reports that we have seen coming into this have been that there are now going to be ground troops entering into Gaza. As Michael said, and he says it so well in that clip, this is an asymmetrical conflict. Using these words like clash, using all of these things that people use to obfuscate what is happening there is something that we can no longer accept. There's a lot that I want to get to in a short amount of time, so I want to open this up to Matt. I will say, as a brief bit of optimism here, in the many years that I have been a supporter of the Palestinians' right to freedom, I will say I have not seen a response against the apartheid system in Israel as strong in the United States as what we have been seeing over the past couple of weeks. It's not perfect. It's not what we need. It's not enough. But I will say that I've never seen this level of condemnation. And I think this is something that instead of sitting on our butts and being happy about that, we should try to encourage more and more people to not just get educated about these things in an academic sense, but to understand, especially people living in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom, that we actually have a lot of responsibility and a lot of power to fight back against this system as well.
Yeah, such a strange thing, right? Like CNN having an actual Palestinian on that's being kicked out and was subsequently Mohammed al-Kurd removed from his house, and have them on at least to cut through a narrative that again, like even up to the president is still maintaining, right? You start any sort of discussion, the very first point of emphasis is the rockets, not anything preceding that. And yeah, I mean, we'll probably talk about it more, but just to get to it, Biden's statement last night was despicable and basically set the table for this. Said, I hope this closes down soon. What does that mean? Like close down soon?
Not only that, there's no condemnation of what Israel is doing. It's just affirmation that they have a right to defend themselves. It's despicable on its face, and it's something that we should be very clear about. There are rockets which can do damage, but not as much as warplanes. We were seeing, I was sharing on Tuesday videos of residential towers being bombed into rubble. I'm sorry, this is not a symmetrical conflict. In East Jerusalem, we're talking about, gangs of far right vigilantes beating up people in the streets with the support of the police, right? And then, we're talking about stones, right? These things are not comparable. It's very clear who is the oppressor and who is the oppressed in this situation. And I think it's something you don't even have to be a leftist to recognize that this is something that cannot continue.
Yeah.
I also, just before we move on to anything else, I did also want to make sure that we aren't just saying, look, Biden's rhetoric is despicable, right? But there are actions behind these things. Again, the United States gives an incredible sum of money to Israel to maintain this system, right? And there are a lot of interests that fight very hard to maintain that relationship. But even on the day-to-day stuff, Joe Biden and the U.S. State Department are refusing to even allow the United Nations to meet on this issue until next week, right? These are concrete decisions by the Biden administration to not only sweep things under the rug, but to actually create, a dynamic where this can continue and that international cooperation, as difficult as that is in the first place, they're just not even going to allow that to happen.
Yeah, giving space for ethnic cleansing, basically.
Yeah.
There's this video here. There's all. That's the other thing is like I remember. Like the social media element of what's going on right now is very interesting too. In addition to like CNN allowing somebody on, but this video, Janan Musa, surreal. This Palestinian children in Gaza celebrating Eid.
It's good.
Eid as war continues in the background, and I mean, yeah, this is this imagery just. I should say, as I learned in watching Abby Martin's documentary that is available now, and I'm blanking on the name of it now, but if you
But Gaza Fights for Freedom.
Yeah, Gaza Fights for Freedom and Empire Files YouTube. Go watch that. But I mean, Gaza, as I think she says, the third most densely packed place.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a small strip of land that houses 2 million people. And I mean, there's so much to say about this, but this is another, thing when it comes to Gaza in particular. Like, this is occupation, and the term open air prison is correct. That is what it means when you don't control your own borders, right? When Israel is preventing people from even being able to fish, let alone being able to control what kind of medicines and foods and things that they're able to import, into these areas. I mean, these systems, the poverty there is something that is very much man-made and created and is deliberate
By design, yeah.
by design.
Yeah, being starved slowly. Um, yeah, horrifying. And hopefully there's less violence than we're expecting at this point, with the IDF, happily announcing they're going to invade Gaza. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if Matt's ready yet. If we want to go to that, or I think maybe later we have some more videos of Michael that we sort of wanted to break down and to talk about as well, because this is a long fight, and I think it's important to get the message out there about the truth of what's the truth of the conflict as it's happening like right now today, but also the historical dynamics, because I know a lot of people get very intimidated by the subject, like privately. They might feel one way. Privately, you're horrified when you see these images, but there are entire industries, there are, very concerted efforts to confuse people and intimidate them, like intellectually intimidate them so that they're afraid to speak up.
It's by design, exactly. If you
and-
feel that way, which I mean, Michael talks about it in one of the clips in that lecture earlier. I definitely felt the exact same way. Like, it just felt like an issue you don't touch, right?
Mhm.
Like, and that, because you hear like the rote things like, this is such a complex thing, you have to go back millennia or whatever, like all these sorts of like phrases that really just give you an out from coming down anywhere on it, right?
Mhm.
Like, that's really what that stuff is designed for.